Welcome to the City Stay Into Yourself podcast. I'm your host, Tex Wambui, and I'm back and better today. And in today's episode, we will delve deep into the essence of individuality and explore how staying true to who we are can shape our lives, our communities, and the world at large. Like I said, I'm your host, Tex Wambui. And today, we are going to discuss a topic that's not only profoundly personal to me, but also globally significant. The importance of individuality in the context of energy and climate actions. This episode is going to be a conversation and a journey, one that connects the personal with the global, the individual with the collective. We'll explore how knowing who you are and staying true to that can play a pivotal role in how we tackle some of the most pressing challenges of our time, including energy, security, climate change, and the transition to a more sustainable future. But first, let me start with a story. A story about a moment in my life that shaped my understanding of what it means to be true to oneself. Some years ago, I found myself at a critical juncture in my life, in my academics, in my career development. And I had a choice to make, one that would define not just my professional path, but also who I was as a person. On one hand, I had an opportunity to take a well-trodden path, one that promised security and acceptance. On the other, there was a less certain route, one that aligned more closely with my values and beliefs, but it was fraught with challenges and uncertainty. For a while, I grappled with the decision. The easier path was very tempting. After all, it was the one that everyone around me seemed to encourage. But something inside me kept resisting. It was a quiet voice, a gut feeling, telling me that the easy path wasn't truly mine. It wasn't until I took a step back, quieted the external noise, and really listened to that inner voice that I made my choice. I chose a path that was true to me, that one that aligned with who I was at my core. This decision led me here today, to where I am today, hosting this podcast, I would say, and doing all the other things I'm doing and talking about these things that I want to talk about, and engaging with these important topics and living a life that feels authentic and aligned with my values. And this experience has taught me that individuality, knowing who you are and staying true to that, isn't just about making personal choices. It's about making decisions that reflect your deepest beliefs and values, and those decisions in turn shape the world around you. Individuality is the cornerstone of authenticity. It's about understanding your unique qualities, recognizing your values and beliefs, and allowing them to guide your actions. In today's world, where conformity often seems like the easier path, embracing your individuality can feel like a radical act, but it's a necessary one, especially when it comes to tackling global challenges like climate change and energy security. You see, when you truly know who you are, you're not just another face in the world. You become a face and a force for change. Someone who can influence the world in ways that are meaningful and impactful. And that's exactly what we need right now. Individuals who are clear about their identities and are ready to take action based on their convictions. So in this episode, I will go into exploring how individuality intersects with some of the most critical issues of our time, in which I believe are energy security, climate change, and its transition to a sustainable energy system. And I'll discuss how my personal identity, and also how your personal identity as a listener, can inform your approach to these issues, and how by staying true to yourself, you can make a difference in the world. So, let's start by talking about energy security. It's a concept that's been evolving rapidly in the recent years. In an article I wrote, personal article I wrote, Energy Security in the Climate Era, you can find it on LinkedIn. I explored how understanding of energy security has shifted from being geopolitical concern during the Cold War to a multifaceted issue that now includes environmental sustainability and technological innovation. Back in the 1970s, during the height of the Cold War, energy security was primarily about ensuring a steady supply of oil. The oil crisis of that era were stark reminders of how vulnerable economies could be when they were too reliant on foreign energy sources. This led to the creation of strategic petroleum reserves and a push for energy independence. The focus on diversification, reducing reliance on any single energy source or supplier to mitigate the risk of supply disruptions. Today, the challenges are different but no less daunting. Climate change poses a direct threat to the very infrastructure that supports our energy systems. As rising sea levels, as people would say, more severe storms and extreme temperatures can all wreak havoc on our power grids, pipelines, and energy production. And there was that incident that happened in Texas, actually, in 2021, where it triggered by an unprecedented cold wave, which emphasized just how vulnerable our energy infrastructure is to extreme weather. It's a vulnerability that would only intensify as climate change progresses. Yet, as we confront these challenges, there is also an opportunity, a chance to reshape our energy systems in a way that are more resilient, sustainable, and secure. So this brings us to the role of individuality in energy security. You see, energy security is not just about government policies or corporate strategies. It's also about the choices we make as individuals. When you decide to install solar panels on your roof, or to drive an electric vehicle, or to reduce your energy consumption, you're contributing to energy security in a very real way. I use an example I heard from somebody, which is something that was considered radical, but to me it was just plain, clear, and simple. Would you rather use a solar panel made in China or a solar panel made by the United States, considering that one had higher carbon emissions, one had less carbon emissions? Just think about that. These individual actions, when taken collectively, can lead to significant shifts in how we produce and consume energy. Moreover, and to add on to that, when you're clear about your values, such as commitment to environmental sustainability, you're more likely to support policies that align with those values. This is where the power of individuality really comes into play. By staying true to who you are and what you believe in, you can influence the broader system, pushing for changes that not only enhance energy security, but also contribute to the fight against climate change. In that article that I wrote, Energy Security in the Climate Era, I also delved in the need for a holistic approach that integrates climate policy with energy security strategies. This means that as we transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy sources, we must ensure that our energy systems remain reliable and resilient. This is where innovation comes in. Whether it's developing more efficient battery storage technologies, modernizing our energy grids, or finding new ways to harness renewable energy. But none of this happens in a vacuum. It requires individuals, innovators, advocates, and everyday people who are willing to push the boundaries, to challenge the status quo, and to stay true to their vision of a more sustainable future. So, as we move forward, let's remember that energy security isn't just about a policy issue. It's a personal one too. And it starts with you, with the choices you make every day. Now, let's shift gears here and talk about another critical issue, carbon pricing. In an article I also wrote on LinkedIn, it's called Revisiting Carbon Pricing in a New Landscape. I had read a few reports by the Climate Leadership Council and a few other organizations and a few government sources. In this article that I wrote, I explored how carbon pricing can be a powerful tool for reducing greenhouse emissions and driving the transition to a low-carbon economy. Yes, I've heard all the arguments and debates and everything, and I completely understand some people are saying this is a scam, or some people are not saying this is a scam, but I will think of it from an economist point of view as well. You know, if we're going to think about our future, we also got to think about the economy, and I think carbon pricing is a good way to think about it. But before we dive into these details, let's take back and understand what carbon pricing is all about. At its core, carbon pricing is a way of putting a price on the carbon dioxide emissions that contribute to climate change. For a minute, actually, I remember I was at a conference once and somebody kept saying the word carbon, carbon, carbon. All I could think about was carbon fiber on cars, and just thinking that, but something had to snap back into me and realize they're talking about carbon dioxide emissions. The idea is simple. By making it more expensive to emit carbon, you create an economic incentive for businesses and individuals to reduce their carbon footprint. And I would say the United States has been a leader in this. And our counterpart, China, has definitely been not caring. They really said, we are not giving a whatever about this. We're just going to keep producing at a high rate. Now, there are different ways to implement carbon pricing, such as carbon taxes or cap and trade systems, but the underlying principle is the same, I think. Make polluters pay for the damage they cause to the environment. This is another conversation for a different day, but I also think that these first world countries compared to third world countries should also consider the fact that first world countries pollute more and cause third world countries to also be part of the pollution problem when it comes to carbon emissions because of how much they're doing in the industry. That's a different conversation for a different day, and I don't want to get into that today. Now, going back to this carbon pricing, this not only encourages the adoption of cleaner technologies, but it also helps to internalize the environmental costs of carbon emissions. Now, where does individuality come in? For carbon pricing to be effective, it needs public support. And public support starts with individuals understanding the importance of carbon pricing and advocating for it. This is not just a policy issue, it's a personal one too as well. It's about recognizing that the choices we make today, whether it's how we vote, or products we buy, or how we engage with our communities, can influence the adoption of carbon pricing and other climate policies. The EU is trying to do it. We'll see how that affects the world. They're doing it. Now, anyways, let's revisit this, what I wrote, the Revisiting Carbon Pricing in a New Landscape. I discussed the Baker-Scholes Carbon Dividends Plan, which proposes a carbon fee starting at $40 per ton of CO2 and increasing annually. I learned this from the Climate Leadership Council report that they published. And this plan is designed not to only reduce emissions, but also to return the revenue generated from the carbon fee back to the public in form of dividends. This idea is to create a system where reducing carbon emissions benefits everyone, both economically and environmentally. But here's the thing. For this plan to work, it requires a groundswell of support from individuals who understand the importance and are willing to advocate for it. This is where individuality comes in to play. Right? So, individuality comes into play because it is one of the most important things to consider when in talking about transitioning into this. So, what I would say is this. By staying true to your values and beliefs, you can become a powerful advocate for carbon pricing and other climate policies. This not only affects domestic ways of production, but it also impacts international standards. It kind of sets a high standard that we should care for our environment. And if we're not, you got to pay a fee for it. And you as an individual, you can influence your community, your elected officials, and even the businesses you interact with to support these kind of initiatives. Just like I said earlier, are you want to buy solar panels that were made from a lot of carbon emissions or a solar panel less carbon emissions? They still do the same thing. Think about that. But advocacy is just one part of the equation. Individual actions also matter. Like I said, where are you going to buy your product from? For example, when you choose to reduce your carbon own footprint, whether by driving less, eating a plant-based diet, or supporting companies that are committed to sustainability, you're not just making a personal statement. You are contributing to a larger movement that can drive systemic change. So in revisiting carbon pricing, it's important to highlight the role of technological innovation in reducing emissions. The CERT model, which you can learn more by visiting the Climate Leadership Council website, which projects the impact of carbon pricing on technology deployment, shows that policies like the Baker-Scholes plan could lead to significant increases in renewable energy capacity, electrification, and the deployment of new technologies like small modular reactors and carbon capture and sequestration. These technologies, I would say, are essential for meeting our climate goals. Not as individuals, but as a collective group. But their adoption depends on public support and your individual action. So as you think about your own role in the fight against climate change, remember that your voice matters, your actions matter. By staying true to who you are and what you believe in, you can help shape the future of carbon pricing and other climate policies. Now, let's kind of shift now to one of the most critical components in the transition to our sustainable future, electrification. I also wrote an article about this. It's called Strategic Imperative of Electrification. You can find it on my LinkedIn page. In this article, I explored how electrification is not just an environmental obligation, but a strategic necessity for ensuring national security, economic growth, and technological leadership. Electrification refers to the process of replacing fossil fuels with electricity as a primary source of energy for various sectors, including transportation, heating, and industrial processes. Let's just get this straight, though. I'm not saying that we can be 100% electric. I'm saying we can be relying on electricity more rather than fossil fuels. Because I think we're still going to need fossil fuels in some formal way. We just don't need it as much as we need it. We're using it now because we have way other different alternatives. And I think this transition is very crucial for reducing greenhouse gas emissions and mitigating the impacts of climate change. But it's also more important than just environmental benefits. Electrification has the potential to drive economic growth, create jobs, and enhance energy security. However, the transition to electrification is not without its challenges, I would say. So one of the biggest hurdles, I believe, is securing the critical minerals needed to produce batteries and other key technologies. Minerals like lithium, cobalt, and nickel are essential for manufacturing batteries for electric vehicles and renewable energy technologies. But the supply chains for these minerals are often concentrated in specific regions, which can lead to supply disruptions and geopolitical tensions. Hint, hint. I think China controls most of it. So what can we do as the United States to secure a supply chain? Think about that. Now, this is where the individuality and collective identity come into play. As we push for electrification, we must also push for responsible sourcing of critical minerals. This means advocating for policies that ensure these minerals are extracted in environmentally and socially responsible ways. It also means supporting companies that are committed to sustainable practices and holding those that aren't accountable. And in this article, I also discuss how securing a sustainable supply chain for critical minerals is not just a logistical challenge, it's a strategic one. It's about ensuring that the U.S. and other countries have the resources they need to lead the global transition to electrification. But this can only happen if individuals like you and me are willing to advocate for responsible practices and support companies that align with our values. Another critical aspect of electrification is the role of nuclear energy. In regions like sub-Saharan Africa, where energy access is limited and the need for reliable power is high, nuclear energy offers a viable solution. I think it's clean, consistent, and powerful. I also delved up a article called "The Secret to Wiring Up Sub-Saharan Africa." It's on LinkedIn as well. Check it out on my page. I explored how nuclear energy can provide the steady, reliable power needed to support industrial activities and meet the growing demand for electricity. But nuclear energy is often met with so much skepticism and fear, largely due to concerns about safety and waste disposal. This is where individuality plays a crucial role. By staying true to your values and seeking out the facts, you can help shift the narrative around nuclear energy. You can become an advocate for its benefit while also pushing for the necessary safety measures and waste management practices. In sub-Saharan Africa, the adoption of nuclear energy is not just about technology, it's about changing perceptions and embracing a new identity that prioritizes both energy security and environmental sustainability. This shift in collective identity is only possible when individuals are willing to challenge their preconceptions and stay true to their commitment to a sustainable future. So, electrification is a massive undertaking that requires a collective effort, but it also requires individuals who are willing to lead, to innovate, and to stay true to their vision of a better future. Whether it's through advocacy, innovation, or personal choices, each of us has a role to play in this transition. So as we move forward, let's remember that the transition to electrification isn't just about technology, it's about people. People who are willing to stay true to their values and beliefs, and who are ready to take action to make the world a better place. At this point, you might be wondering, how did we balance our personal identities with the need for collective action? How do we stay true to ourselves while contributing to the greater good, especially when it comes to global challenges like climate change and energy security? The answer lies in understanding that individuality and collective action are not mutually exclusive. In fact, they complement each other. Your personal identity, your values, and your beliefs are what guide your actions. When those actions are aligned with a collective effort, they become even more powerful. Take, for example, the leaders and innovators who have driven significant changes in the energy and climate space. These individuals didn't conform to the status quo. They didn't follow the crowd. Instead, they embraced their unique perspectives, stayed true to their values, and used their individuality to influence change on a global scale. One such example is the growing movement for sustainable and ethical supply chains in the critical minerals industry. Companies like Tesla, General Motors, and Rio Tinto are leading the charge in securing sustainable and diverse supply chains for the minerals needed for electrification. There's also other companies such as Panasonic, Sumitomo Metal Mining, Toshiba, Mercedes-Benz. All these companies are pushing for that. But this didn't happen overnight. It required individuals within these companies to push for change, to advocate for responsible practices, and to stay true to their commitment to sustainability. Another example is the push for carbon pricing in the U.S. Baker-Schultz carbon dividends plan, which I discussed earlier. It's gaining traction because of the advocacy of individuals who believe in the power of economic incentives to drive environmental change. These advocates are staying true to their values and using their voices to influence policy at highest levels. But it's not just about the big names and the high-profile initiatives. It's also about the everyday choices that each of us make. When you choose to support companies that align with your values, when you vote for policies that reflect your beliefs, when you reduce your own carbon footprint, these actions, however small they are, contribute to a collective effort that can drive systemic change. So, how do we balance our personal and collective identities? The key is to stay true to who you are while recognizing that you are a part of something larger. It's about finding that balance between individual action and collective impact. When you stay true to your values and beliefs, you bring authenticity to the collective effort. And when that effort is driven by authentic, committed individuals, it becomes more resilient, more impactful, and more likely to succeed. So as I begin to wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with a few thoughts on how we can move forward, both as individuals and as a collective. First, it's important to recognize that the challenges we face, whether it's climate change, energy security, or the transition to electrification, are complex and multifaceted. They require solutions that are equally complex and multifaceted. But at the heart of these solutions is the individual. You, me, and everyone else who is willing to take a stand, to stay true to their values, and to take action. Second, we need to embrace the power of individuality. In a world that often encourages conformity, staying true to who you are can feel like a radical act. But it's a necessary one. Your unique perspectives, your values, and your beliefs are what make you powerful. And when you use that power to influence the world around you, you become a force of change. Third, we need to recognize that individuality and collective action are not at odds with each other. They are two sides of the same coin. When you stay true to yourself, you bring authenticity to the collective effort. And when you contribute to a collective effort, you amplify the impact of your individual actions. Finally, I want to challenge you to think about how you can use your individuality to make a difference in the world. Whether it's through personal choices, advocacy, or innovation, each of us has a role to play in shaping the future. So ask yourself, how can I stay true to myself while making a difference in the world? How can my unique perspective contribute to the solutions we need? How can your fingerprint, the ones your parents co-created for you, and now you have it for yourself, how can that fingerprint leave an imprint and impact on this world? Anyways, thank y'all for joining me on this journey today. I hope this discussion has inspired you to think more deeply about the importance of individuality in the context of energy and climate actions. And remember, individuality is not just about being different, it's about making a difference. Until next time, stay to yourself, stay committed to your values, keep pushing for the change you want to see in the world. And as we always say, pursue your dream, seize the day, peace out.